Hello and welcome to Unacademy. I welcome you all to the Hindu analysis. Before we begin, two very important announcements for you. First, that the 19999 offer is back with 12 months extension. Do use the code IAS English. When you use this code, you will be tagged to our team. And further, do understand that the price is going to rise after 1st August. So therefore, it's a good opportunity. Use the code IAS English. Thereafter, we have a very interesting initiative which Chethan Sir is going to take today on 24th July at 7 p.m. The link is in the description box. You can register for a certain webinar, a certain session which Chethan Sir is going to take on the Platinum platform, where he will explain to you how to look at monthly current affairs, how to tackle it, how to link it with static, what should be your approach. And therefore, monthly current affairs program as it is starting from 26th. But sir is going to explain to you how to approach everything in the best way possible. Again, based on first come, first service basis. So therefore, do register for this webinar. Very important on the Platinum platform. Therefore, you will be able to understand what is the Platinum experience also. So do register for this. The link is given below. Now, if you need the PPT of this session, you will find it in this Telegram channel. Do remember that the PPTs are important repositories of information. We have already condensed a lot of things. Therefore, you don't need to read the newspaper. Now, the topics is a good mix of GS paper 2, 3 and prelims orientation. For example, we'll talk about the advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Then we'll talk about what is modern warfare, what are the dimensions of it. Then we'll talk about the Swachh Survekshan and what is the takeaway from that. Then four simple straightforward topics. The Prime Minister in the UK with regards to the FTA, what is the update there. Then we'll talk about why is the Home Ministry moving out from the North Bloc, very interesting development. Then how India has resumed the Chinese tourist visa after 5 years, part of the de-escalation. And last but not the least, a bill has been tabled in the Lok Sabha. Monsoon session is going on. Interesting bill. We'll talk about the four main highlights. Though it is a proposed bill, it has to pass through both the houses and then get the assent of the president. That is a separate issue altogether. But again, a good mix of topics. Now, the first topic which we have to discuss is, can presidential reference change a judgment? And this is linked to a long drawn controversy which has been going on since 8th of April. Since 8th of April, there has been a long drawn controversy between the center and the state, and 8th April was a landmark judgment by the Supreme Court, and that in turn has created a sequence of events where we have now culminated to the president seeking the advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court itself. Now, let's try to understand what is the chronology, what is the static behind it, what is this advisory jurisdiction, and is it binding on the president or not. Now, the first thing which happened on 8th April, as we all know, was the Tamil Nadu state versus the governor tussle went to the Supreme Court, where R.N. Ravi, who was the governor of Tamil Nadu, he was holding on to 10 bills. He was given 13 bills. He gave assent on 3, but he withheld 10 bills, and he withheld over months in a way to have an intention to hold it indefinitely. And this is where the Tamil Nadu government moved to the Supreme Court saying that the governor cannot illegally or unconstitutionally hold on to a bill either reserved for himself or reserved for the president itself. And the Supreme Court also gave the judgment on 8th April that a governor refusing to assent on 10 bills is illegal and unconstitutional. As I said, this was a tussle which was going on. Multiple times the bill had been repassed, but still the governor was not ready to give the assent on the bills itself. And therefore, the judges argued that the governor cannot prolong his inaction, and that is constitutionally illegal in that regard. And therefore, the actions of R.N. Ravi were problematic. Now, the president has asked advisory jurisdiction over this judgment. I'll tell you how the judgment changed the whole constitutional provision of Article 200. But the question is, R.N. Ravi versus Tamil Nadu is a age-old story. However, because the Supreme Court intervened and now has given a time-bound, you can say a timeline in which the state governor or the president had to send the bill back, therefore, there is now a question which has been raised, and that is where the president is asking the Supreme Court, what is your advice on this? Now, what is the question? The presidential reference, therefore, broadly seeks clarity on whether courts can prescribe the manner and the time frame within which the constitutional authorities must act. Meaning, in a way, this was a judicial overreach where the judiciary was telling an executive to do something, which is that you have to give assent within 1 month, within 3 months. Now the president has asked that, does the judiciary actually have this power, or does it actually have the power to prescribe the executive to act within a certain time frame? And that is where on 22nd July, the Supreme Court has sent notices to the Union, the Center, all of them, that the President is seeking advice. And now there will be a proper session which will start from August, and where this question will come into context. Now, this is a landmark judgment for a reason. Because see, before the 8th April judgment, this is how the Article 200 of the Constitution was read, which is that when a bill is passed by state legislature, the governor has 4 options. Give assent to the bill, which is accept the bill and make it into a law. Withhold assent. Return the bill, not a money bill, for reconsideration. Reserve the bill for the president's reconsideration or consideration. Now see, withholding and assent is not the problem. Here it is direct, that I will give you assent, I will not give you assent. What the governors were doing were, they were holding on to bills after these 2 points. Either it had been returned, repassed, still they were not giving assent, or they were using this tactic that we would like to reserve this bill for president's consideration, and this was leading to indefinite delays, what irritated the Tamil Nadu government also. That is why they moved towards the Supreme Court. Now, after the 8th April judgment, now the Supreme Court has prescribed guidelines in that judgment under Article 200, which is seeming to be a problematic expectation, because the judiciary is prescribing the executive what to do. So, how now Article 200 is read after the 8th April judgment? Assent or reservation on advice of Council of Minister, this should be done within 1 month. Withholding assent against council's advice must return the message within 3 months. The reservation against advice must be done within 3 months. And post consideration assent must be given within 1 month. Meaning now there is a whole list of, you can say, dates which would be prescribed, months which have been prescribed for all of these functions which were prescribed under Article 200. Therefore, Article 200 has now been further clarified because the Constitution wasn't. And that is where this has become problematic, because people and even experts and even the president consider this as a judicial overreach, and therefore under Article 143(1) of the Indian Constitution, the president has asked the advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to tell her, is it that the courts can prescribe a constitutional executive or an executive to act within a certain space? This is the question which has been sent. Courts can prescribe the manner and the time frame in which constitutional authorities must act. This is the advice which has been sought under Article 143(1). So the first thing which you need to remember before we talk about anything else is Article 200 is under question. 8th April was the judgment, which was the Tamil Nadu government judgment, and under this judgment there has been now further consideration and understanding that Article 200, we are prescribing the way it should be passed, in what time frame it should be passed, and this judgment has led the president to then use 143(1) to then seek the advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, that can this be done or not. Now, this is what the current affairs is. We have to see what happens in the session of the Supreme Court when it happens in August. But now we need to know what is advisory jurisdiction and is it binding. Is the advisory jurisdiction actually binding, and what are the contours of it? So the current affairs part ends here. Now we have to go into the static portion. So when we talk about 143(1), now you should know this. Under this, the Supreme Court has been empowered it to render opinions on questions of law or fact that may be connected to an ongoing litigation. So the ongoing litigation would be 8th April. So 8th April is a proper judgment. Now, the only prerequisite for the president to do so is that the president must be satisfied that such a question has arisen or is likely to arise, and that it is of such a nature, of such public importance, that it warrants court's opinion. This is where the idea that a judiciary is prescribing an executive a certain time frame is of public importance. However, the court is bound to limit itself only to the questions which the president has asked, nothing beyond that. Now, can the Supreme Court deny that we don't want to give an opinion? Yes. Because Article 143(1) uses the word may, and in 1978 there was this use that the court refused to give any form of reference, any form of advice, saying that it is not of importance to us and it is not of a legal question, therefore we don't want to furnish any advice, or it will be used politically. Therefore, the Supreme Court can say, though they have admitted this presidential request or reference, but they could deny it. So the judiciary is also not backing down, saying that it is unconstitutional for a governor to sit on a law which has been passed by both or single unicameral or bicameral state legislature, and then withholding it for month on month. That is unconstitutional. So therefore 143(1) is the advisory decision. Second is the idea that is it mandatory for the Supreme Court to respond? No. Now, the $1,000,000 question is, if the judiciary gives an opinion, is it binding on the state or on the president? We have two contradictory, you can say, judgments. In 1974, St. Xavier's College, which is state of Gujarat, Supreme Court said that the advisory opinion are non-binding. However, when in 1981 it was R.K. Garg versus Union of India, it said that the opinion was binding. Therefore, it is purely circumstantial, and how does the Supreme Court actually give the judgment or reference? It matters on that. Now, what is the key takeaway from this whole understanding? You have to understand Article 200. You have to understand 143(1). You have to understand that it uses the word may, so the Supreme Court may deny. And it is in both cases binding and non-binding based on the judgments which we've seen previously. Now the question is, which judgment the Supreme Court is going to follow, and can April 8th judgment be actually overturned is a question to be actually pondered over, and the Supreme Court has to decide. We cannot say anything right now. It is sub judice in that regard. Let us see what happens in the court, but it has given us static understanding and also a timeline of what has been happening in Tamil Nadu in that regard. So very easy, straightforward concept, something which is evolving, interesting text and context article. Now, a straightforward question in GS paper 2 can be, what is the advisory decision of the Supreme Court? Is it binding on the president? Give both of the answers, which is, it can be under this judgment, it cannot be under that judgment. Leave it to that, because it is a question which is court only can answer, not you and me. So therefore, interesting topic based on a saga which is now entering, it's, you can say, home run phase, because the Supreme Court has to say something about judicial overreach here. Now, let's talk about another interesting article, New Age warfare, and with Ukraine, with Israel, Palestine, and with multiple fronts, even Operation Sindoor, warfare is changing. And this article talks about three very interesting things in that regard. The first thing which it argues is that war as we know it has changed. That is not something new in that regard. But he says, where is the tipping point? Where did war change? Did it change after First World War? And the answer is no. Did it change after Second World War? To some level, yes. The war became the you can say Hitler using blitzkrieg, the whole use of wireless telephone, the issue of mass destruction, the use of nuclear technology. So nuclear power and the nuclear threat emerges in the Second World War. But what he argues is that the Operation Desert Storm, which is basically related after 9/11, he says that maybe warfare between World War II to 9/11 was of a certain nature. But since 9/11, which led to the Americans entering the West Asian sector properly under Operation Desert Storm, this changed warfare as we know it today, and what is called as modern warfare emerged here. This is very, very important. Modern warfare, according to the author, emerged after Operation Desert Storm, and the idea is that 9/11 changed everything. Though the idea of trench warfare, which was used in World War I, was debunked by the time we came to World War II, and it was more about speed, it was more about aircrafts, it was more about bombing. The idea is that that type of conventional warfare, which was developed in World War II, has now ended by the time we come to 9/11. So since 2000s, we would say within 21st century, the whole concept of warfare, the way it is fought, has totally changed. Now, in that context, what are the features of this warfare and how does India need to change? So the first thing which he points out is that this new modern warfare is based on automation. Automation means as much use of machines as possible. Manpower may be to use these machines, but the use of technology is extremely important with automation and you can say autonomous activity. And the best example of that is extensive use of drones. Drones, we saw it in Operation Sindoor, we are seeing it in Ukraine and Russia. Drones are the future of warfare, which is unmanned aerial vehicles, be it semi-autonomous, be it autonomous, be it loitering, whatever it may be. The idea is very simple. Drone technology is the future. Manpower to control the drones is important. However, we need to make sure that we are up to scale with regards to drones. Further, he argues that the traditional hierarchies of network-based understanding is changing to rather advanced centric network warfare, which is now you need a command center and you need a certain, you can say, centralized control over warfare, which is called theater-based warfare, where you have one theater which is controlled, where the Air Force, the Navy and the Army all are working together. Thereafter, the advent of cyber and artificial intelligence has made the warfare digital. So it is cyber warfare which is even more important, and there are multiple aspects which now are not fought on the ground, but it is about critical infrastructure, it is about thermal power plants, because everything is digital and online. It is very, very difficult to control something like that, and you have to make sure that you have cyber security. So therefore, be it automation, be it drones, be it the military going beyond this traditional hierarchies to a centralized understanding to cyber warfare, warfare has changed to a point that it is not just fought in the ground but in the digital space also. Further, he argues that there is a concept of hypersonic weapons coming through. We used one of them very well, which is BrahMos, wherein the idea is that now fast moving objects, we also that for the same reason tested Akash Prime recently, which is the way fighter jets are used, and that too at hypersonic, you can say, speeds. It is very, very important that we take that into consideration also. So therefore, what modern warfare according to the author is multi-domain. It is physical, it is digital, it is cyber, it is AI enabled, and it is now based on drones, it is based on high moving or high speed, you can say, hypersonic weapons. Therefore, we cannot have the same approach which we had for, you can say, decades before this point. And this is where the author argues that there's a need to change our defense procurement and modernization plans, because our procurement strategy, our diversification and our indigenous manufacturing timelines still are based on that 9/11, pre-9/11 based understanding. With 6th generation fighters, which be it J-10, be it J-20 with China, India needs to make sure that the lag in UAVs, hypersonic systems, has to become self-reliant and self-sufficient. Therefore, what the argument of the article is very simple. Modern warfare is fought in multiple different spaces, and therefore it needs to change our defense understanding, and it needs to take into consideration that there is cyber, there is drones, there is new age technology, and there is the idea that hypersonic weapons are being used. So together we have to understand that all of this needs to change our philosophy. If we don't, we will lag behind, and we are still in that pre 9/11 based understanding. So a question: in the modern era of warfare, India needs to rethink its procurement and defense policy. Discuss. Very interesting question, but very realistic question, both either in GS paper 2 or in GS paper 3 based on science and tech or based out of governance. The idea is, this is a very good question, very realistic question, and you can use what I've told you in this article as fodder to write this answer. Now, we recently just discussed that the Swachh Survekshan was out. We saw that there was a new Swachh League which has been introduced. Now, this is a whole article by one of the former directors of the, you can say, Abhiyan itself, of the Survekshan itself. So, therefore, it becomes important. There are certain important takeaways and important points which we can use in the examination, and we will use that in that sense. See, why is Swachh Survekshan, the 9th edition, considered so important? So what is the significance of this whole Survekshan in that regard? It is considered to be the world's largest, you can say, cleanliness survey, which happens across the world, taking all cities into consideration in India. And because it gives a reality check to the policymakers, takes close to 4,500 cities into consideration, and also gives third-party verified feedback on 140 million citizens who are related to these cities itself. It is something which gives you an eye-opener and gives you some tangible understanding of what is happening on the ground in cities itself. And because it takes into consideration waste segregation, how it is collected, how sanitation workers are getting welfare, or even how grievance redressal happens, it is a survey which makes a lot of sense in the larger scheme of things, and therefore it is one of the largest in the world and very significant for a country like India. Now, we have already discussed who has topped the rankings, but this time there is a population based understanding. The ranking is not just random, it is now in brackets, which is called the Swachh League, where you have certain cities in the 3 to 10 lakh, from 10 lakh to 10 lakh and above, 1 million and above, and less than 3 lakhs. Therefore, there are now multiple different actors or multiple different cities which are now firsts. That's a separate issue altogether. But what makes this survey more important is the principles which have been applied. So, the first interesting concept which was brought in, which was through the league concept, was that there are now not just 2 population categories but 5. Therefore, making sure that the ranking is more realistic, is more performance based, and is more indicative of what is happening in the cities. For example, if you are comparing a city like Agra with a city like Ahmedabad, then it is not a fair comparison. And therefore, what they did was, they are now taking population data, and now we have different categories under population, under which we have different, you can say, cities winning this first prize, second prize, third prize. And therefore, we have new entries also, and Ahmedabad being the first in that regard. But the idea is very simple, that now we have, for example, NDMC, the Chandigarh, and multiple other smaller cities which previously did not get any form of consideration. They are also now part of the Survekshan in that regard. So the first is to make sure that the population criteria is used in the best way possible. Further, there is now this concept of what is called as city cleanliness or clean city recognition and mentorship program, under which the idea was that we will give 78 Swachh awards on specific things on which cities are good. For example, Indore is best known for segregation at 6 categories at the source itself. Surat is known for selling treated sewage water itself. Thereafter, in Pune, cooperatives are leading to better waste management. Visakhapatnam is known for eco parks. Thereafter, Lucknow is known for a waste wonder park in that regard. Agra is known for the way it transformed for 47 acres into a green space. And therefore, now what they've done is they are recognizing each city not just randomly in saying that you have these marks or these points. Rather, they are recognizing what is the best practice in that regard. This is also something new which the 9th edition had and is also something very significant. So because these schemes have been evolving since 2014, you have to make sure that you talk about what are the changes coming through. Changes is the league concept, changes is the recognition concept of how different awards have been given on certain understanding. So therefore, the theme this time was reduce, reuse, recycle. This was a theme so as to make sure that self-help groups also come together. Previously, it was about wealth and untapped potential of waste, which was previously there. So therefore, what this information I've given you is very important because it will give you an understanding of the evolution of a scheme, and you should just add it to any static source which you have. What the Survekshan has done is democratized and it made it more recognition based so that there is more incentive for the cities to do something unique which can make them the best practice area in that regard. Now, with this, our big articles are over. Now we can move out to the smaller articles, which basically are updates or concepts which we need to further see what happens over the days. For example, this is going to be sorted by tomorrow. I will talk about this tomorrow once it is inked. So our Prime Minister is on the visit to Maldives and to the UK. Maldives to celebrate 60 years of the relationship and its independence also. And the Prime Minister in the UK has a very important agenda. He will meet the Prime Minister Stramer. He will meet even Charles III. But he has to sign a FTA with the UK sector, with United Kingdom, which will allow India to get a lot of access to the luxury goods which come from the UK. And we have to see what are the contours. I don't want to speculate anything. There's a lot of speculation here. Let's see what is signed tonight, and by tomorrow we will know what is the trade deal which has been inked. But the Prime Minister is on a two-nation tour, important in that regard. Thereafter, we have seen this news coming through. If you have been following art and culture, you would know something called the Central Vista Redevelopment Project, under which now the North Block is now being vacated by the Home Ministry, 90 years of it being there. So the North Block, South Block houses very critical ministries, but under the Central Vista Development Scheme, there is something called the Common Central Secretariat which was developed. The Common Central Secretariat, the idea was, because we have different bhavans, Vayu Bhavan is different, Krishi Bhavan is different, coordination becomes difficult. Some of the ministries are in the North Block, South Block, some are very far away. You need coordination within ministries. So as part of the Kartavya Path and the whole concept of this whole redevelopment, the idea was to have a main centralized central secretariat in which close to 347 rooms have been given to the Home Ministry, one of the biggest ministries to be in the North Block. They are now vacating it. This building was made by Baker and Lutens together, and the first, you can say, it was inaugurated in 1921. The idea is very simple, that this will lead to now a major shift with the old parliament to the new parliament to this. An era is ending. The North Block is going to be further used along with the South Block in what is called as the Yugin Bharat National Museums, which are being developed. So both of them will become museums, one before 1857, the other one after 1857. But the idea is very simple. This is a transition which will lead to a new India in that regard, with shifting to the new parliament. This may also be an indicator that we are losing that colonial space, which is also good, and going into the era of modern, you can say, administration, where all ministries are together, connected, will lead to better coordination and effective administration also. Again, something which we'll see will keep on further developing as we go on. Now, this is a bill, if passed, will be very interesting. So the National Sports Governance Bill has been introduced in the Lok Sabha by the Sports Minister, and it proposes for creating a board, one board, a centralized board, which will control even the BCCI later. So the proposed National Sports Board has more accountability. All federations of all sports have to come under it, and will have also access to union budget and union government funds in that regard. But the most interesting feature is that a national sports tribunal will also be created, which will lead to further any form of dispute. It will be taken to this tribunal. It will act like a civil court and decide disputes ranging from selection to election involving of federations and athletes. So very interesting that way that we are creating a grievance redressal mechanism for athletes to go that why was I not selected or why was he selected as the member of a federation. This is needed. India has too decentralized a system, too much corruption in these you can say federations, in these commissions in that regard. A very interesting move, very good move. When passed, will become again a harbinger of new space when it comes to the understanding of what we call as sports administration in India. The last topic is, you can say, a part of a further story of de-escalation over the past 5 years. India, or the Indian embassy in Beijing in China, has finally started to issue tourist visas to the Chinese into India. This is happening after 5 years, welcomed by both sides, but was soured by the Galwan Valley issue and the standoff at the LAC in that regard. This is, you can say, the last stage of de-escalation where the diplomacy has gone just beyond the borders to the people, and therefore this should be welcomed in that sense and will allow for, you can say, South-South cooperation. We cannot trust China in that regard, but at least this shows that the escalation which we saw maybe 2 to 3 years back has now further percolated to the grassroots level to then give visas to the Chinese to visit our very beautiful and very diverse country in that regard. So, before I end this session, I will remind you that Chethan Sir is taking a very important session today. Remember, join it because it will help you understanding how to contextualize different forms of current affairs. And you also should remember that it is based on registration. It's a free webinar, so you should just join it. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.